Within the last several hours, something happened that every major news platform is talking about, but almost none of them are getting it right. Iranian missiles struck the heart of Tel Aviv. At the same moment, Hezbollah rockets rained down across northern Israel. Sirens blared in over 20 communities simultaneously. Buildings were reduced to rubble, civilians were wounded, and a region already balanced on the edge of full-scale war has now taken another massive step toward total collapse. But here's what we need to make absolutely clear from the very beginning. What happened today did not start today. What we are witnessing is not a sudden escalation out of nowhere. It is the predictable, step-by-step consequence of decisions made weeks and months ago. Decisions that mainstream media either minimized or completely ignored. And in this video, we're going to give you the full picture. Not just the headline, not just the shock, but the real context that explains how we got here and where we are headed next. If you're new here, hit subscribe right now. Every day, we break down stories like this with the depth and honesty they deserve. Let's get into it. What actually happened? Let's start with the facts from the last several hours. According to verified reports from Israeli and Arab media, Iran launched at least 3 separate waves of missiles starting around midnight. We're not talking about a few stray rockets. Each wave involved multiple missiles, coordinated, timed, and clearly targeted. One of those waves struck the Ramat Aviv district in northern Tel Aviv. Social media footage shows thick smoke rising above the city skyline. At roughly the same time, Hezbollah fired approximately 200 rockets from Lebanon into northern Israel. Sirens went off in cities like Nahariya and Haifa. Israeli medical services report at least 2 people wounded by shrapnel, and 1 residential building in the community of Moshav Hananil was completely destroyed. Now here's something critical about the information war surrounding these events. There is a significant information blackout regarding real casualty numbers coming out of Israel. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a documented pattern. Both Israel and the United States have repeatedly delayed or minimized acknowledgement of their own losses while maximizing coverage of the other side's losses. Why? Because both governments want to project invulnerability. They want the world to see that only the enemy is suffering. When you understand that, you understand why official casualty figures from any party to this conflict should be treated with serious skepticism. But here's what almost no one is saying clearly. While missiles were falling on Israel, Iran itself was waking up to a devastating bombardment. Reports from Israeli media, and this detail is crucial, confirm that overnight strikes hit western Tehran and extended to cities including Shiraz, Isfahan, and Qazvin. Mehrabad Airport inside Tehran was heavily targeted. These are not fringe reports. Multiple independent outlets have confirmed them. Iran was being bombed at the exact same moment it launched its own missiles. This is not a one-sided story. This is a full-spectrum mutual military engagement happening right now. And here is where the analysis gets critically important, the part almost nobody in mainstream media is willing to say clearly. The targets that Israel and the United States struck inside Iran were not, in any meaningful sense, purely military objectives. In the 24 hours leading up to this morning's escalation, confirmed reports document strikes against petrochemical facilities, but also against at least 30 Iranian universities. 30 universities. The most recent was Sharif University of Technology, one of Iran's most prestigious academic institutions, comparable to MIT or Caltech in national significance. There are also confirmed strikes on hospitals, roads, civilian bridges, and residential areas across multiple Iranian cities. We need to be direct about what this is. Under international humanitarian law, deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure, educational institutions, hospitals, residential areas constitutes a war crime. That is not an opinion, that is the definition written into the Geneva Conventions. When you bomb a university with students inside, you cannot claim it was a military target. When you destroy a hospital, you cannot justify it as collateral damage. When you demolish civilian bridges and roads, you are not conducting a military operation. You are conducting a campaign of terror against a civilian population. That is the accurate legal and moral description of what has been documented in the last 24 hours. Now, let's connect this to the political context, because there is a direct line from recent weeks to what exploded this morning. Donald Trump issued an ultimatum to Iran using language that was extraordinary, even by the standards of this conflict. The substance: open the Strait of Hormuz or face the total destruction of your civilian infrastructure. We need to be precise here. Threatening to destroy civilian infrastructure as a coercive tool is itself a violation of international law. It is a war crime to threaten it, regardless of whether the threat is carried out. That ultimatum had a deadline. That deadline expired today. And what we are seeing this morning strikes on universities, petrochemical plants, roads, bridges, and residential areas is the partial but devastating materialization of that threat. Now, let's talk about the coordinated nature of what Iran and Hezbollah launched this morning, because this is a strategic development that changes everything. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officially described this morning's offensive as a joint integrated operation. Those three words are extraordinarily significant. This is not two separate groups independently firing rockets on the same morning. This is a coordinated, jointly planned, simultaneously executed military operation involving two distinct armed forces operating under unified command. Iran launched ballistic missiles from Iranian territory. Hezbollah launched rockets from Lebanese territory. Both happened at the same time, designed to saturate Israeli air defenses from multiple vectors at once. We are no longer looking at two separate fronts. We are looking at a unified military alliance that has achieved operational coordination exceeding what many Western analysts believed possible. Iran and Hezbollah are operating as a single, integrated military force, sharing intelligence, coordinating timing, and executing combined operations to overwhelm Israeli defenses. That is a qualitative change in this conflict. While all of this unfolds, there is a parallel story that has received far too little attention. In northern Israeli communities like Kiryat Shriuna, which has endured repeated rocket attacks, local residents are beginning to speak out in striking terms. They say the Israeli government has abandoned them, not failed them, not made mistakes, but deliberately calculated to pursue a military agenda that serves political objectives while leaving civilians in the north to absorb the consequences without adequate protection. People who once felt safe now live under the constant threat of a rocket coming through their roof. Sirens sounded more than 20 times in a single morning. The sentiment is clear. We did not consent to this war. We are not soldiers, we are civilians, and the government that is supposed to protect us is using us as acceptable casualties in a conflict whose purpose we don't understand and whose end we cannot see. That dimension is almost entirely absent from Western media coverage. There is a narrative being pushed that Iran is running out of missiles. The evidence cited is that Iran launched fewer missiles in this wave than before. That interpretation is wrong. Iran is not launching fewer missiles because it has fewer. It is launching fewer because it no longer needs as many to achieve the same result. Earlier in this conflict, to get missiles past Israeli air defenses, Iran needed large salvos. But Israel's air defenses, Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow, have been significantly degraded. Interceptors are not infinite. They are expensive and take time to replace. As those systems are depleted, Iran's missile penetration rate has improved dramatically. Now, to land 4 missiles on target, Iran might only need to launch 6 or 8. This is the asymmetric exhaustion trap. A Shahed drone costs a few $1,000s. The interceptor used to destroy it costs $50,000 to over $1 million. Iran does not need to overwhelm defenses with raw numbers. It only needs to sustain a rate of fire that keeps those defense systems consuming their most expensive component, while Iran's own costs remain manageable. Every interceptor fired is dollars, time, and manufacturing capacity that Israel and the US must replace. Iran is trying to make the conflict so persistently expensive that the other side concludes continuing is unsustainable. And the evidence strongly suggests
Here
it's
is where we
working.
are right now. Iran and Hezbollah have demonstrated the capability and willingness to execute coordinated joint military operations against Israel from two directions. Israel's air defenses are under measurable strain. The United States faces an asymmetric cost curve. Civilian populations on all sides are bearing the consequences. What is missing is not military power. What is missing is diplomacy, mediation, any serious internationally supported effort to create the conditions for a ceasefire and a political process that addresses the underlying grievances. Instead, ultimatums are issued. Civilian infrastructure is bombed, and each side convinces itself that one more escalatory step will produce the breakthrough that all previous steps failed to achieve. History offers very few examples of conflicts like this ending well through military escalation alone. It offers many examples of conflicts that could have been resolved politically, but were allowed to spiral into catastrophes that harmed everyone, including the parties that thought
We are
they were
not
winning.
here to tell you who is right and who is wrong. These are genuinely complex questions involving history, law, politics, religion, and human suffering on a scale that resists easy moral categories. But we will tell you what is actually happening, with sources to back it up and an analytical framework to understand why. That's what this channel does every day. If you found this analysis useful, if it gave you context you weren't getting elsewhere, then share it. Send it to someone who's trying to understand this conflict, but keeps feeling like the coverage isn't giving them the full story. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us live, because this situation is moving fast, and we will be with you every step of the way. The missiles are still falling. The rockets are still being launched. The decisions that will determine where this goes next are being made right now. And you deserve to understand exactly what those decisions are and what they mean. See you in the next video.